Welcome to Builder Buzz by Home Nation, where we bring in builders, developers, and everyday investors to talk about one of America's biggest opportunities, affordable housing. We'll talk about real costs, explosive growth, big mistakes, and tough lessons you won't learn anywhere else. Whether you're building homes, buying land, or just building big ideas, this podcast is for you.
Hello everyone, today I'm going to sit down with Greg. He's an architect, he's an urban planning designer, he's an advocate for attainable housing, and he's just about everything that you can imagine when it comes to building, when it comes to construction. He has a ton of experience, 71 years old, so he's been in the industry for a very, very long time, and so he knows what he's talking about. We're going to learn some fantastic things. We're going to learn about what sprawl is. We're going to learn about affordable housing compared to attainable housing. We're just going to learn a lot about zoning, form-based zoning, no zoning, very restrictive zoning, a bunch of different terms that are very, very relevant. Whether you realize it or not, the community that you live in was designed intentionally or unintentionally. So today we're going to learn about some of those things so that when you're going to work, you can understand a little bit more about why your work is here and your house is here and the roads were designed as the way that they were. So tune in and let's learn something great. Great. So to start, Greg, do you just want to let us know who you're with and what exactly you do? You're from Ohio, came down here to Florida. Just tell us a bit about that journey and what your job and your business is involved with that part of that journey.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate you having me as a participant in the podcast. In between Ohio and Florida, I've lived in Texas and New Jersey. I have worked with some of the largest firms in the country prior to starting my own business in 1998. I've been in Florida for just about 30 years. And I actually moved down here to join a guy that I grew up with in Ohio. We both went to Ohio State together. We're fraternity brothers. We worked together for a couple of years, and I decided to break out on my own. My firm is Greg Burke Architect. We're located in Saint Augustine. We've been here for about 4 years, but I've been in the business. I actually entered an architectural engineer's office at the age of 18. And I've gotten two degrees in architecture, and most of that time while I was in school, I was working either full-time or part-time to get myself through school.
Yeah.
But I've done everything from porch additions to high-rise buildings, and I've settled on housing and have been actually in and out of housing since 1979.
Wow.
Ohio State, and lived just after graduation. I lived with one of my college classmates in a place called German Village. German Village was created at the turn of the 20th century for German immigrants, hence the name, who were brought to the United States to start the brewing industry in Columbus. So we had a little village created that was a walkable community, much like the things you hear coming back now with missing middle housing and newer design. But this stuff, at the time was, close to 80 years old. And we had everything you wanted. There was a mix of living capabilities. I lived in what was a converted single-family home that added a one-bedroom apartment. We had a two-bedroom house. Next to us was a quad. Next to that was a shotgun house. Behind the quad was another quad. On the opposite side, it was a single-family house. I just really loved it because we could walk to restaurants and bars and the dry cleaner. The things we needed were very easily to walk to. And I also walked to work every morning, about 15 minutes to work. So it was a great place to live. While I was working with NBBJ, which was at the time was the third largest firm in the country, we did a cluster housing project that we call Courtyard Homes now. We picked up 5 or 6 Victorian homes from around the city of Columbus and moved them onto one site, built detached garages with them. And it was, a great project. And it was kind of the precursor for what Missing Middle would become. When I moved to Florida, we did a little bit of everything. I've done some churches, I've done some office buildings, but and a lot of single family homes. But recently we've been doing townhouse projects and
Hmm.
multifamily. But I've really gotten into the throes of missing middle. I've been trying to educate the folks up here in St. Johns County that we
Hmm.
need to do better planning because we've got traffic nightmares that are incredible. Missing middle housing and creating a walkable community is the way to do it. I've got a major issue that I'm trying to put forward both in
Hmm.
Florida and at the national level.
Okay.
We're planning on trying to get a major change to the building code where we could take triplex and floorplex dwelling units out of the commercial code
Yeah.
and put them into the residential code. This will be a huge cost savings. We've got a developer up here in Jacksonville who has been doing some missing middle housing for the past couple of years.
Hmm.
I spoke to him at an Urban Land Institute forum last week
Hmm.
and told him about this. He says, this will just be huge if you can get it passed. It'll be an incredible savings for developers that are wanting to build these types of facilities.
Yeah.
Right now, being in the commercial code, they've got to be sprinklered. The sprinkler would go by the wayside, at least in Florida and probably in most places across the country. Stairs are built to the residential code.
Hmm.
Energy code would be less significant. There'd be cost savings all the way around. So that's what I'm kind of up to today. It's
Good.
keeping us pretty busy.
So you use this term a couple times, missing middle. Is that?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit more? What is that term?
Yeah, missing middle is a term that was coined in right around 2003, if I'm not mistaken, by, believe it or not, a Berkeley, California architect uh, named Dan Paralek. And basically, what missing middle is what I was just talking about with German Village. It starts with duplexes, and that now, since ADUs have become a big deal, ADUs have been
Yeah.
added to the moniker of missing middle. But we're talking about duplexes, triplexes, quads, row houses, courtyard housing communities,
Hmm.
uh, row houses, and live work. Basically, it's everything that you can build for living. Oh, includes townhouses too.
Yeah.
Shouldn't leave that out. It's everything between a single family home and a
Hmm.
mid-rise apartment building. And it's what's
Okay.
because of zoning. Over the past 100 years, 60 years,
Hmm.
maybe 60 to 80 years, there was the zoning that we used in most of America today started in about 1940, and it started in Euclid, Ohio. That's
Okay.
why it's called Euclidean zoning. And basically, it was created to keep dirty industry away from where people were living. There
Hmm.
were a lot of problems with emphysema, and people had all kinds of illnesses related to smog and
Hmm.
dirt in the atmosphere. So that's why this zoning has been created. But now we're looking at trying to come up. There is a zoning concept that's called, and it's not that new. It's been around for about 25, 30 years now,
Hmm.
called form-based zoning. And basically what form-based does is it doesn't really care what the uses are. It's
Hmm.
more about what the buildings look like and how they fit into scale.
Mm.
And you go with 7 different scales from the rural area all the way to high rise. It works in a lot of different places. The city of Cincinnati, for instance, just converted over to form-based code. The entire city will be done
Wow.
under that. So it presents a lot of opportunities. It gives you the chance to have these walkable communities that couldn't exist without the zoning being changed. So
Hmm.
even if I'm lucky enough to get the triplex and fourplex
Yeah.
into the codes, we're going to still need to make some zoning changes to make it work and
So
work effectively.
yeah. Form zoning. Tell me a little bit more about that and how that would allow communities to be developed that weren't able to be developed before.
Well, what it does is it will allow businesses and residences. We used to, if you go back to a lot of the big cities in the older areas, there were a lot of buildings that were built with businesses on the ground floor and people lived on the floor above. That's what we're really talking about. The form of the building is really what's important, not so much what
Uh,
goes inside of the building. So we're talking about you can work at a single family scale where everything, is going to, top out at maybe 15 to 18 feet. And then
yeah.
you can go to a 2-story where we may be 35. And then when you go to 3 stories, you may be at 50. And that's how this whole code starts to work. And you start to address the street, when we talk about rezoning and going to a form-based code, the street is the most important thing and how the buildings relate to the street. So you try to take care of pedestrians and bicyclists and buses and all those other multimodal methods of transportation and work them in depending on the size of your city. So it gives a lot of flexibility that doesn't exist right now.
So how do you get involved with zoning? If you're doing architecture, how do you get involved with zoning?
Well, I'm an urban designer. What I do is involved with our I speak at county commission meetings. I attend planning and zoning board commissions where we try to push these movements forward. I also belong to the Northeast Florida Builders Association, which happens to be the fourth largest builders association, which takes in about six, 7 counties in Northeast Florida. I've talked to them about form-based code, about missing middle housing, and another term I'll throw at you is pattern zoning. And pattern zoning works on the premises of having pre-approved building plans that the jurisdiction, city, county, whoever, has paid an architect to design them. And basically, a mom and pop developer or a smaller scale developer could go into the building department, take a look at the plans that they've got available, say, I want to buy this one, I want to buy them, and they've come at a greatly reduced rate. The bonus is they've also already been approved according to the building code. So they save a lot of money, and that's something that started out in Texas at neighborhoods surrounding the university, or Texas A&M University. And it's spreading across the country now, too.
So are there some cities in Texas or elsewhere that don't have any zoning?
Yeah, Houston. I lived in Houston for 5 years. And
okay, that's what I thought, yeah.
Houston, in a way, is... there was a little community west of downtown called West University, right by Rice University. And basically it was, a walkable neighborhood, a mix of uses. One of the best architectural bookstores that I had ever seen was located in this area. It doesn't exist anymore. But West U had that walkability where you could go to a restaurant or a bar, from your house and not have to walk more than 15 minutes or so. Houston is the only one that I know of right offhand, but you can have a high rise that's right in the shadow of a single family homes in its shadow. It's tending to, the way they're working things in Houston now, they're trying more and more to kind of spread out, much in the same way that the form-based code sets out how to build. Try do that in their communities where they develop the scale so that you go up. You don't have, the tall and the short right next to each other. You try to build it up. So there's, an easy transition in the building types.
So what do you think is better? Like you should have just, hey, free for all, no zoning, or hey, we have very, very zoning or light zoning. Like, what do you think is going to be the best? And are there any, like, would it be the exception? Would it be the rule? Are there any examples of what works really well?
I think it's going to be the exception. Houston has had to build 3 outer belts. When I lived there, I was there in 1982. When I moved there was one belt around the city. And I lived just outside of that belt. By the Galleria. I worked downtown for Gensler and Associates, which is now they're just called Gensler. At the time was the largest firm in the country and still is the largest firm in the country, actually in the world right now, or that's just strictly architectural. It would take me, it was 11 miles to get to downtown. It would take me at 7 o'clock in the morning. If I started out at 7, it'd take me about an hour and 20 minutes to get downtown. So they've had to build 3 belts for all the traffic that's there. So I think that Houston is the exception of the rule. My want and desire would be to see the Euclidean replaced with the form-based code because it allows a lot more flexibility in what can be done. A lot of the developments that are done now by the major builders are done as a planned urban development. We call them PUDs. The PUDs are allowed because they set their own zoning requirements. But what you end up getting is a 40 or 50 acre tract of land that has 500 to 600 single family homes on it and a center. and that's it. That's that leads to it's what's clogging up our roadways. It also leads to completely housing that's far too expensive. My wife and I moved to Saint Augustine 4.5 years ago. At the time, we paid about roughly $350 for our house. That house is now 4.5 years. Actually, it was within 2 years later was valued at over 500,000, just because
Wow.
of what's happened. Uh, That'll eventually, I would imagine, it will adjust, but probably not much, and it will only go up from there. The average worker, the people that St. Augustine is a tourist area.
Hmm.
The people who live here, that work here, don't live here. The ones that are in the service industries, the hotels, restaurants,
Yeah.
bars, even the small businesses live outside of us. We found out last week that there are 45,000 trips into the city and 45,000 out every morning and evening for people
Wow.
that can't afford to live here. That's why our roadways are clogged. And the
Wow.
sprawl, just exacerbates it. So if we could get to the foreign-based code and our communities more walkable, and it's not an attempt to take away cars. No one says that you have to take away your cars.
Yeah.
It just means you don't have to get in it all the time, which to me is a big plus.
Yeah.
At 71, I'd like to be a little more walkable than I am right now.
Yeah.
We live in one of those 500 single-family home neighborhoods. I live here because my wife loves it. She would prefer to be in a downtown area that we could afford also, but there just isn't much of that around here.
So use this term sprawl. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is, and then maybe if it ties into what the ideal form-based code city layout would look like? I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah, sprawl is really what we call the suburbs. Everybody that has to get in their car and drive somewhere to work, and if they're driving more than 10 minutes, that's what we're talking about, sprawl.
So sprawl's not ideal.
No, it's a detriment to safety and welfare, quite honestly. People who have to commute 35 minutes to an hour, they're in traffic that's heavy. I-95 is the highway that's here, and you can't go a day without having 3 or 4 accidents of traffic. So you sit in that, and if you're lucky, you've got a book or an audio book that you can listen to while you're stuck in traffic. But instead of a 35-minute commute home, you may be spending an hour to get home. That creates stress, and you're home late for dinner. Your spouse has made dinner for you, and you get home and it's cold, and you go through all those kinds of things with your spouse.
Yeah.
So it's life tougher, but that's what sprawl is the suburbs and everybody that has to commute out of those suburbs to go to work. If there was more of a function where there were places, opportunities for business that were in closer,
I see.
People could either walk to, or that they've got a 10 or a 15-minute drive, it wouldn't be so bad.
I see. So the form-based housing would allow, because the businesses are restricted in where they can actually physically be. And so form-based housing would allow them to be more in the community. Sprawl, suburban areas.
When I lived in German Village, there was an interior design firm that had their headquarters in German Village. It was a mechanics garage. The building was probably about 10,000 square feet, so it was a good-sized building. And they had their offices in there. So a lot of the interior designers, and they were primarily a retail design firm, lived within a 10 to 15-minute walk. It was very convenient for them to get to work. And it's that kind of thing. They don't have to be big industrial buildings. You could still have some light industrial, making, tchotchkes or something else that could be marketed out. But smaller businesses could really work very well in these types of communities.
Yes, we've had some trouble. Like we purchased a property, and we have to get it rezoned to allow for displaying mobile homes on it, even though the property right across the street displays it has the zoning allowed for it. And so it's just really like the pain. And I'm curious. So we come from Indiana, right? And Indiana is just different. You can, as far as zoning goes and permitting and what have you, you can get well, most counties don't even require a permit. And if they do, you can get the permit pretty much same day. Zoning is like, well, you property, you can build what you want. So you coming from Ohio and then living in Houston, where they literally don't have zoning, what has that experience been like? Now coming here to Florida, do you think that the Florida zoning laws are to have, because you've got experience on the total other side of the spectrum, now coming to Florida with, in my opinion, very restrictive laws?
Yeah.
But I'd like to hear what your opinion is on that.
Well, we haven't, we've got the NIMBYism that, not my backyard. And unfortunately, it's really funny. I used to live in Vero Beach, Florida before I moved here. I was there for 25 years. And again, I had the same kind of involvement, very heavily involved at the city council, the county commission, planning and zoning boards. We'd have people who would get up, a new project is being proposed, even if it's not a whole thing. And they come in and they say, I moved here because it was a small town. It was quiet. It was where I moved to Fort Lauderdale because I didn't like the traffic. I don't want Vero Beach to become Fort Lauderdale. What they don't realize is they are already part of the problem.
That's so funny.
I can hear from other places. I can't. If I was born and raised in Saint Augustine and I didn't like the development, I could get up and complain. But what I find in many of these places is people who were born and raised in the communities really don't object to the growth. They'd like to see it better managed and better planned, but they really don't object to the growth. In fact, my wife was born and raised in Vero Beach, and in her day, it was a citrus town. That was part of the business. And everybody knew each other. The natives all knew each other. But when it started to grow, when they opened up Johns Island, which is what's on the Atlantic Ocean, the wealthy people from up north and from down south were moving to Vero Beach to live on the ocean. And then it became very restrictive. People didn't want certain things to happen. And the NIMBYism has, people have got to start looking at what's best for the community instead of what's best for themselves.
Yeah.
People have said to me, this whole missing middle thing just is not a good idea. Well, why not? You tell me why it's not a good. They can't tell you why it's not good ideas, except that they don't want density, and density is the bad word. These places could develop very well. You could put 40 acres at 14 units per acre. And it looks like every other single family neighborhood that you would find, except maybe there are 2-story buildings and there may be 5 units in that building or 6 units. But it looks like, not a McMansion, but something between a McMansion and a 2-story home.
Yeah.
And, the streets are, fairly comfortable. You can park on both sides of them or one side of them and still have enough room to have 2 lanes of traffic go by. So I think that's part of the issue with the Cubs. Florida is very restrictive. We are required by state law. Every community has to have a comprehensive plan on how the community is to develop. St. Johns County, where Saint Augustine is located, is in the process of redoing theirs. We have people who say we want to change the land development code based on what happens in the comprehensive plan. Well, you're required by law that if you make changes to the comprehensive plan, that you must within a year make your changes to the land development code. And we're trying to, the people that are doing our comprehensive code have been trying to incorporate some of the ideas of missing middle because they heard it a lot from a lot of different people. And it's starting to make sense. There are certain people that want to see that happen. So hopefully with some kind of luck, that'll become part of the comprehensive plan. And then there will have to be something in the land development code that starts to recognize this is what people want. And that's really what it should be. You always have very vocal people who show up who are anti-everything. I had the Urban Land Institute forum last week, and the first panel was 5 previous mayors from cities around the country. I knew 2 of them personally, one from Tampa and one from Jacksonville, who she happens to be the current mayor. But it was funny. We also had one from Oklahoma City. He says, there are 3 types of people when you're talking about planning and development. So there are people who are not going to like anything, no matter what no matter how pretty or beautiful it could be, they're not going to like it. Then you're going to have people who tell you they like it, but they're going to point out all the things that they don't like. And then you're going to have people who really don't give a damn, and you can do whatever you want. He says, really, the ideal, just like every other negotiation, is that everybody walks away a little unhappy because they didn't get everything they want.
Yeah.
That middle ground where you have people who are in favor of it and, might be a little bit unhappy with, some of the results. Those are the people we need to have show up for these types of meetings and express their views, because the antis are going to come out. First group of people who are not going to be happy with anything and basically don't have an understanding of what's going to. They just hear the word density. And I always, at the end of my presentation, I said, density in itself is not a bad word. Where it becomes a bad thing is how you execute it. There are bad ways to do it, and there are good ways to do it.
Could you give some examples on density executed in a bad way and density executed in a good way?
I think if you look at some of the way those large urban sprawl developments happen, they happen 2 or 3 units per acre, and then we have this traffic problem because they've got to drive somewhere to get there. There are places that are almost okay that are in Florida. Celebration. If you go up to the Panhandle, Seaside started it. It's almost okay because you can walk just about everywhere in Seaside, and you have Alice Beach and Rosemary Beach and a couple other smaller communities. Watercolor. They don't have quite the business that happens there because it was basically set up. They were basically set up as vacation spots. People would have second homes there. If they were done, and the density is right around 14 to 20 units per acre, but everybody loves to go there. They love these places. If you look at any ancient city, if you go back over to Europe, the reason why Americans go to Europe is because they love walking around London, Bath, Rome, Florence. Florence is, to me, is the best city in the world. I would live there in a minute if I was younger. If I knew what I knew about Florence today, when I was in my 30s, I would not be living in America. I'm happy. My mother was Italian, so I'd be living over there because it's just so phenomenal and such a beautiful place, and the food is outstanding. Everything that you want to have is right there. So, and that's much more dense. I don't know what the density of Florence is, but it's well above. It would be well above the 14 per acre. But everybody loves those places, and I can't understand why people want to go and visit those places. When they want to come back home, they don't want to live in some place like that. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I see that. That's very interesting. We definitely have experienced that ourselves. We've had meetings or what have you that you have to have with the building department for some developments that we've wanted to do, and people have come protesting, and truly sometimes they don't even know. They don't really have much reason to protest or any evidence backing it. They just say no. They just don't want it.
That's the unfortunate side of it. And it's a tough job for the county commissioners, the city council, whoever's hearing those complaints, because they're supposed to be there looking out for the community. And sometimes they fall to the people who say, we don't want it. If they come out in large numbers, it's one thing. There is a problem. And it probably should be restudied and, reproposed. But if it's, a handful of people that are coming to these things, they're the people that show up every time. And they complain about the project. We have some of those people in St. John's. They just don't want to see anything. They're in the vast minority, and a couple of them are natives. They were raised here, but they just don't want to see it. And we're trying to introduce attainable housing here, where those folks that are part of that 45,000 trips a day, where we can reduce their burden.
Definitely, Wow. So what would you say that you enjoy doing more, being an architect, doing kind of the zoning or and urban development? Like what or advocating for that middle housing? What do you enjoy the most?
Well, I enjoy designing, and it doesn't matter what scale it is. I'm working on a triplex to show people what it can look like. and it's a 2 bedroom on the lower floor, and the upper floor is a 3 bedroom. And single the single bedroom is 1,001 square feet. The is 1,200, much like you'd find in any apartment. And the 3 bedroom upstairs is right around 1,900 square feet. So it's like a small house. And all of these have got laundry rooms with stackable washers and dryers, and they've got a table to fold clothes. We've got adequate room for water heaters and air handlers. The bedrooms are comfortable; they're not tiny. The kitchens on the 1 and 2 bedroom are small. They're compact. Their dining rooms are adequate size. Their living rooms are pretty good. But I'm doing this at 3 levels too, to show people you can take the same plan, and I can make it affordable at hopefully somewhere, because there's 3 units, at around $500,000, and then I can make it very expensive, starting at over $1 million, just by changing the doors, the detailing. So I love doing that, but I like being an advocate too for things that are going to help communities. I'm the vice chairman of the State Board of Architecture. I'm on the legal side of stuff too. I do expert witness work, so I've got hands a little bit. My career has been pretty much that way.
Yeah, it seems to be. You've got the knowledge and the drive for it. You can really involve in a lot of different things and make a big impact.
The variety is definitely what makes it enjoyable. I just had a school kid who's thinking about becoming an architect and going to architecture school. And he says, what's your average day look like? I said, there is an average day. That's what makes it exciting. I don't ever see myself retiring. And, I'll probably work, till the day the Lord wants me back. And I'm happy with that. When it gets to be unenjoyable, then I probably will quit. But I don't see that.
No, not anytime soon. Yeah, it sounds a lot like my dad. He's 64 now. He'll be 65 in a bit. And very similar. He's like, I'm just going to keep working, which is he loves it. That's what he loves to do. So and that's really really fascinating. A lot of experience, different experience. So you seem to have a focus on like efficiency, housing. Sounds like a little bit what your focus is.
I try to call it attainable.
Attainable. That's kind of the word now, right?
Yeah, and I've been using that for a couple of years. Basically mean the same thing, but I think attainable is where we want to get to, because affordable, I think it gives you, I mean, what's attainable for me may not be for you, and vice versa. So, or affordable maybe affordable for me, but not for you, and vice versa.
Yeah. But attainable is something that everybody can attain. So I'll throw this idea out there. So on something because we Home Nation do mobile homes, right? Single wides, double wides. We also do modular homes, and then we're getting into new construction, which is your built on site, your typical what your builder does. But it's not going to be super custom. That's not what we want to do. The desire of Home Nation is to have attainable housing. Everyone can attain. Everyone can cost housing. That's what we're looking for, and so that's why we provide what we do. We sell a high volume, and because of that, we can have a very low cost compared to other dealers, because we don't have to have such high margins because we're selling a high volume. We're working on a product that's a cross between modular housing and site-built housing. We call it a mod pod. And I just want to throw this idea out there. Get your thoughts on it, right? Kind of like the heart of the home. It'll be, and we've done a couple of them, maybe like a 10 by 20 modular unit, right? We call it the mod pod. And in that unit, you're going to have your electrical panel. You're going to have 2 bathrooms. You're going to have all of your plumbing, your AC. On one wall, you're going to have all your plumbing. So when you're there on site, and the other wall is your kitchen. So you can just connect everything in there. So all that you have to do once you do your foundation, you put that mod pod on a little crawl space, or eventually once we have the modular state approvals, it only has to be on little recessed there with some bigger floor joists. You put that on there, then all you have to do from there is do a little bit of journeyman wiring. It's not very complicated. You've just got your switches and some lights that you have to do, but everything else is in there. Connect your AC from outside, from your main electric outside, connect your plumbing to your sewer. And we're finding that we're fleshing this idea out, but we're finding that it's coming to be a much lower cost single family residence compared to your typical construction. Just wonder, have you ever thought of something like that? Have you ever seen something like that?
Oh, well, yeah, I have. I was contacted about 2 years ago by a California developer who was doing 3D printed houses.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the what they wanted to do here, I don't think they're California. They thought in California it was low sloped roof and one drain. In Florida,
Mm-hmm.
they could make it work, but it was going to be expensive. But they did the same thing. They had that module in the center of the house that gave them the flexibility of how to attach the other elements and work quite well. Quite well. I think that's the movement of the future in a lot of. And I think it will even develop into much larger houses sometime. I think the near future is exactly what you're doing. I think that the proof of concept is probably already out there.
Yeah.
With all the builder magazines and architectural magazines that I read, there's more and more of that happening. A lot of it's happening at larger scales, doing mid-rise and high-rise apartments with those components in there. But
hotels.
to do it, for attainable housing, I think if you master that, you're gonna have a big share of the market. It's still early for this to develop and go about. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, and I think that seriously should be considered for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're trying to do. That really is we think future of housing, that modular component where it's the heart of everything, and it's going to lower cost significantly. And by us working with manufactured housing and doing some site built, we can kind of see from both perspectives and say, you know what, modular housing alone, just modular housing, it's not the answer. The modular community would love to, the industry would love to say that it is, but it's just really not. So,
well, it attracts all different type of people. One of my brothers was considering moving down here from Ohio with his wife and buying a modular home, and I said, do your research before you really start to do that. Do your research, because there are better companies out there than others.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. And the thing is, at the end of the day, you don't have much when it comes to cost savings with modular. Like you don't. And that's, modular builders would hate to hear that, but that's just the truth. You look at the numbers, it's just the truth.
Yeah, it's changed in the last, I'd say, 10 to 15 years. It used to be somewhat affordable, and now it's gotten to the point where it's a little more expensive.
Yeah, for sure. Greg, thank you. Really, really enjoyed.
Great. I'm glad to hear. It was a good conversation.
No, fantastic, man. I loved hearing about all that zoning. I learned so much about different terms: sprawl, missing middle, attainable as opposed to affordable. Learned a ton, and I'm sure that this is just we've gone this deep in everything that you know.
Yeah.
So maybe sometime in the future we could have you back on and talk a little bit more. Because I really, really enjoyed this.
Great.
Thank you, Greg. Here.
You too. Bye-bye.